As a gacha game, Project Sekai makes a majority of its money by creating cards, special artworks of the characters that come with special abilities to aid you in gameplay. What urges us consumers to literally gamble for this comes down to a lot of things. You either think the art is pretty, it's of your favorite character, you need it to get a higher tier, etc. These cards come along with events and usually have visual and thematic ties to the event story or song. So when Project Sekai's 5th anniversary rolled around, we were expecting something big. But what we got hasn't been up to par to the standards this game has set up for itself. It's really up to you whether you agree with that or not. Art is subjective after all. I'm just here to state my opinions, why I think Project Sekai cards have come off as boring recently. And look, I am not an expert in art. I am just a girl on the internet who wants to go to school for it and get a PhD in art history when I'm an old lady. My word is not law. My analysis of these artworks is mine, and you can totally agree or disagree in the comments. All I ask is not to be hateful. 90% of everything I say here is my opinion. This is not the end-all be-all, I promise! If anything, this video is an excuse for me to yap about art and express my passion for it. This is not a ruthless takedown. These are simply my observations as an active consumer of these cards and these artworks. With how prevalent AI has become, I cannot exaggerate how important it is that we support art made by humans and keep it circulating. Treat this video as a love letter, not a diss. So let's get started. What I think these cards are missing is composition is single-handedly the most important thing in a work of art. If you leave this video remembering anything, let it be that. Composition in art is the arrangement of certain elements that guide the viewer's eyes. You've probably seen these guides to composition on Pinterest before that look like this. Composition is what turns good artwork into great artwork. And I started this video off of composition because literally every single thing we talk about here is going to lead back to it. Before I bring in our brightly colored anime guys, we're going to talk about art from ye olden days to give you guys some prime examples of what makes good composition. The first thing that came to my mind when thinking about the use of composition in old art is at the Pergamon altar. There's some crazy sculptures here, but I want to focus on this frieze of Athena. It's her, I promise. Her head isn't in the picture of us, but she would have been the focal point here. Your eyes would go from her face, down her arm, down this guy's body, up to Gaia, up Nike's legs, and back to Athena in a circular motion. So this would be an example of a really strong composition because the arrangement of the figures literally brings her eyes across the entire thing, and it's strengthened because Athena's shield, it's being circular and it's in the middle. It's so freaking good. So this entire composition is built off the curves of the human figure and the motion seen in the drapery. The ancient Greeks knew what was up. So I think something similar to this would be a card like this. Iris trained 4-star from the It's Time to Restart event. This card clearly had a planned out composition. Similar to the Pergamon sculptures, the limbs of the characters bring out our eyes across the entirety of the drawing. Iris' face is the focal point. We follow her arm, leading us to Minori. If we go down her body, we'll end up at Iris' foot, putting us into a loop. Spiral compositions are simple, but very much effective. On's 4-star card from the Sing and Sync event does a great job at this. The camera angle being interesting strengthens this piece even more. We spiral up On's legs and complete our swirl with her hair. Aiding the circular motion is her microphone wire and the fences behind her. If a character has long hair, spiral compositions are especially appealing. This is in the same vein as the famous golden ratio composition. Whoa. The golden ratio is this crazy mathematical proportion, but I use it more flippantly when a spiral sucks you in deeper. The last card I'll bring up for this spirally kind of thing is Saki's from the last Stella after the Grand event. I love this card and the bendy piano. Very, very fun. So all of those cards are from one of the character's first events, making them some of the earliest additions to Project Sekai's card discography. Keep this in mind for later. Let's go compare anime art to old art. So this is Diogenes sitting in his tub by Jean Leon I am so sorry, French people. Pretty much, this piece is a prime example of creating balance with imbalance. One of the best things ever. There's more visual interest with this one because the subject's tub isn't in the center of the piece. It's a lot more interesting to look at and gives the painting more dimension by being more on the left. This asymmetry also plays into a greater narrative, symbolism, as Diogenes was a Greek philosopher who was isolated because everyone kinda hated his ideas. Everything is leaning towards the left, but the dogs over here help balance it out, creating balance with imbalance. Love that stuff. Some examples of Project Sekai using asymmetry in their cards would be Ann's initial 3-star. She's the main focus of this even though she's not in the center. And thank God she's not in the center, because this would be a whole lot less interesting to look at. Like the art we just touched on, Ann makes everything shift to the left, but the smaller Kohane balances out the composition. If we're going crazy analysis mode, this hierarchy of scale could be used to imply the skill gap between Ann and Kohane at the start of the game. Then, Toya's card from his first ever focus event. Toya is more on the right side, but his itty-bitty baby self being at the piano balances it out. So, what was the point of me mentioning any of this? Like, it sounds like I just forced you into a freaking art history lecture. It's mainly to show off some great uses of composition and showing how Project Sekai cards also create visual interest through their compositions. Obviously, this is not every composition to ever exist. This video could literally be hours long, but I digress. All the cards I use as a means of comparison are all from the first year of the game's existence. Then, we take the cards that sparked this entire debate. Why are Project Sekai cards boring now? And the answer to that is because they don't have good composition. That's the main root of the issue. As of late, Project Sekai has given us incredibly beautiful artworks. The rendering is so well done that there is an undoubtable growth in artistic technique. Haruka's is the biggest aggressor here, with Saki coming in a close second. She looks amazing. The problem is that she's just standing there. There's nothing to guide her eyes. Central compositions aren't necessarily weaker than any other, but it's important to create unity. What this card needs is lead-in lines. Lead-in lines are compositional lines that guide the viewer's eyes. For example, this picture of the road has 3 lead-in lines, that being the side of the road and the fence. All these arrows are pointing towards the top of the hill and towards the sun, guiding our eyes there. This was photographed with the intention to take us on a journey, not to just look at pavement. With Haruka's card, as well as these anniversary cards, there aren't any of these, making them come off as stiff and static to my eyes. The amount of negative space, too, it feels like Haruka is, like, in a void, and this is just, like a set. What I see in a lot of recent cards to counteract the stiffness is the extreme tilting of the cards. This tilt adds a lot more dynamics to the piece, but when it's overdone, the cards look like vertical drawings that are being forced to be horizontal. But when we tilt, I can't help but think we ran out of ideas to fill the space. That's just me, though. We've seen this time and time again, this central composition of a plain or blurred background that has been plaguing Project Sekai cards recently, and I can't ignore it anymore. None of this is to say that central compositions don't work. Here's how Project Sekai has made them work. Take this Honami card, for example. She's sitting in the middle of the screen, but I'd argue something like this works better than Haruka's anniversary card because of this card's framing. And because of the drums in Honami's legs creating these diagonal lead-in lines that draw us in, creating a background and a foreground. For a more recent example, to show that it still works, I love this Minori card. Minori's is a perfect example of a central composition actually working. We can tell that the artist put her there intentionally, and the spotlight and the perspective on the flooring guides her eyes, also exaggerating the lonely feel this card is supposed to display. This year's birthday cards have started a debate of their own, quite literally being exactly what I was complaining about. Copy-pasted backgrounds! Ugh. Not every card has to be earth-shattering and groundbreaking to be enjoyed. Sometimes it really is just Tsukasa Tenma eating a piece of toast. And all these cards are, like I said, they're so beautifully rendered. You can obviously find joy in all these cards, but having that movement is so integral to any art piece and makes them so much more interesting to the eye. It would actually be wrong of me to make a video talking about Project Sekai cards without mentioning the behind-the-scenes look we got in a live stream. I don't speak a lick of Japanese, so I want to thank Project Sekai English on Twitter for providing a breakdown of the stream, wherein there was a discussion surrounding the developments of the trained illustrations. Whoa! Rough drafts for the cards are created based on the stories and what the artists want to make. I love getting this kind of insight into the creative process for the artists behind these cards. So it's deliberately stated that the stories influence what the cards look like, which is super interesting, but also confusing when we get things like Depression Toast Tsukasa Tenma. While discussing the concept for each card, some suggestions such as our sense of preservation, self-assertion, and conveying the feeling of slight unfulfillment came up. So we know they have key themes they want to depict when making these cards. While I may be looking at these scrapped ideas and going, oh, well, they should have picked this instead, that does not undermine the decision that was made and the valid explanations as to why. So with the scrapped version of this piece, I love the movement her legs give to this card. While looking at this, I get a sense for the spiral composition we talked about earlier. I do enjoy the scrapped idea compositionally, but I do think it could have been too similar to other cards in that set, like Saki's. With Haruka's card here, the artists wanted to depict idol fan service. They didn't go with the idea on the right because it was too fantastical. It was like too much of a fantasy. In my opinion, I love the idea for popping onto the screen. It's something we've never seen in these cards before, besides the Vocaloids. And I love the little acrylic stand on the right. I think it'd be cool commentary on Oshi culture while also being interactive. I love what we got too, and how the ankle shows off her outfit more. The chat bubbles also frame her. Very cute. I think both of these cards are great, and I don't have a heavy preference on which one is better per se. It's just some food for thought. If you want to see more of these concepts versus final products, I'll link the Twitter thread in the description of this video. Seeing things like this is very eye-opening. It makes me wonder, genuinely, what the process was when making a card such as Minori's Bloomfest. This card is genuinely insane to me and is a culmination of all my complaints for the current art direction. She is literally sitting there in the middle of the screen, blurred background, eating strawberries. What did the drafts look like for the artist to pick something that is so static? Especially for a character such as Minori, who on a surface level is very energetic and upbeat. Recent untrained cards too, which apparently scenes are chosen by the writing team. So I do love the camaraderie that both teams have. I think it's super cool. Being little snapshots, untrained cards don't necessarily have to just be mundane center-focused cards. We have Akito's 4-star from Sing and Sync, where On's body frames Akito in the left corner. There's also Kanade's card here, where her hand leads up to Kanade's face, which leads to the music stand, which leads to the piano in the back, that spiral composition we were talking about. Anna's initial 3-star, I love this one, which has really nice framing. Irie's Picnic 4-star is also a great example of framing. So, these untrained cards have been interesting before, and I love untrained cards, guys. But while I'm calling attention to the issue of boring blurred background and character and center, I want to bring up these Rui and Tsukasa cards. They look cool, but you can't look at them and not feel like you're missing out on something. I could go into same face syndrome. I thought that Rui was freaking Kaito, but that's not what I'm doing here. As I've been saying, the art isn't the problem here. It's the execution of these ideas and the lack of visual interest. Because, looking at the unrendered versions versus the rendered version of this Ivory card featured in the stream is honestly fascinating. I'd argue that the one on the left is closer to a card we see closer to the game's launch, just to show, the amount of artistic growth. But that begs the question, Did we sacrifice visual interest for visual appeal? So I made a survey asking people what they thought the best Project Sekai card was. And I also asked for their reasoning. If you're curious in any particular stats, Mizuki's Train from Wither This Path of Thorns was the most common choice. And when asked what they thought the worst was, the most common choice was this Tsukasa card. Okay, but the real reason I bring this up is because I gave the form fillers the option to give reasoning for the choice. And some of you do not play about your favorite cards. Whoa. Sorry. So, majority of the reasons for why people thought that, let's say, the Mizuki card was the best in the entire game was all surrounding symbolism. So, we know that people appreciate when the cards connect to the story, and that's great considering we've established that the art team aims to connect card art to the character stories for, the events. When we look at a beloved card such as the It's All Over card, it's dripping in symbolism, connecting the art to past cards and being a plain reflection of the anti-Mizuki. No one can say this card isn't symbolic. When we look at something deemed as not good, Tsukasa's I'm the lead card, I wouldn't say there's much narrative weight to it. You could say that the stage is symbolic, but he's always there anyway. There's definitely something to say about Mizuki's card being newer than Tsukasa's, as well as the event it came from quite literally being the most iconic event in Project Sekai history, which could influence the votes. I agree that people are going to lean towards the symbolic cards, which is why a lot of people pull for Colorful Festival and Bloom Festival cards, since the purpose of those cards are literally designed to reek with symbolism for their characters. These are some great examples of what I'm talking about. So, that's why there's such high expectations for these kinds of banners. I'm gonna bring up Minori's Bloomfest again, because when you compare it to these, what happened? What? Because that's why everything's gonna come back to the beginning of this video, where we talked about the 5th anniversary banner. That's the kind of banner that gets so much hype around it and has these expectations for it to have the symbolism and for it to be a little bit earth-shattering. And then we got Haruka standing in the kitchen. I'd be an idiot if I said newer cards don't have symbolism. Look at the Canary in the new Wonder Show cards. But I don't think I would be an idiot if I didn't say for the millionth time how that makes cards like these sad. They don't have any narrative weight to them. So we have us consumers like, which is character-driven symbolic cards. Could I be cherry-picking, focusing so much on these cards with blurred backgrounds and central placed characters? I don't think so. If you scroll through recent cards, you'll see how a lot of the newer ones are just the characters vibing out. Like I said, not all cards need to be deep to be enjoyed. It really doesn't matter a lot of times. Sometimes you, for real, just want to see your character standing there because you love your favorite character. But I'm trying to say that when you're adding these little seeds of symbolism to the cards, it just elevates it. If we take On's card from the Vivid Old Tale, it hits totally different with the context of the story, especially when you learn what sunflowers represent. So it places a motif of sunflowers for On's character, but the symbolism of the sunflowers just elevates the card despite it being conceptually extremely simple. She's in a sunflower field and smiling at us. This is fully my opinion here. I think if we could see more symbolism in a card set like Casa 6, I really do think it would be less boring. Someone like me who probably wouldn't pull for these anyways since I don't care for these characters as much, I think I would feel more inclined to want them if it was more reflective of their story, because that is what intrigues me, because I'm a lore player. I don't play Project Sekai for the actual rhythm game, which is kind of insane, but yeah. This also applies for a newer set from Shizuku's 6th event, where they're kind of just there with umbrellas, and I don't really see how this applies to the characters at all. So what I'm getting at is symbolism is why some simple cards work and why other simple cards don't. At the end of the day, cards are going to be made in a way that will make the most money. We as the consumers need to remember that we're being catered to by a super rich company who want to get richer by selling this to us. Critiquing Project Sekai cards is super interesting. Throughout my time making this video, I was thinking of the whole should fanfiction be criticized debate. Because even though they're both art, criticizing a fanfic, a complete labor of love, is totally different than criticizing, let's say, a published novel. One was made for the hell of it, legit, out of love, and the other one was made with love, but it also costs money. They're both art, and they were both made with love, but without consumers, the author of the published book can't make money off of their work, so some would argue it's valid to critique something if you'd be spending money on it. And that sums up how I felt while I was making this video. I think it's safe to say that there's been a decline in Project Sekai's art direction as a result of boring compositions. It makes me wonder, if we keep spending money on lackluster cards, will this trend continue? Especially when one of the weaker cards I mentioned is placing first in an official popularity contest. There's been a lot of discussion of whether critiquing cards is just people being miserable and complaining. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. I would have not made this video if I wasn't entitled to mine. But since we are the customers, we are the consumers, these cards are made so we spend money and we gamble, it isn't our rights to complain about the product that we're receiving. I didn't make this video to dog on artists. They're so talented. I cannot give them enough props. Seriously. Being critical of the media you love is okay. No one's forcing me or anyone to spend my money on this game, so for real, don't let this leave a bad taste in your mouth. If you love these cards, I'm really happy for you. I wish I could say the same for myself. Personally, I'm really excited to see how Project Sekai continues to grow as a game, and that includes its art, which is what made the game stand out to me in the first place, and continues to inspire me in my own work. I love this game, and I love its art, so I will be keeping a hopeful eye out. So, bye, and please, support real artists.